Welcome in, college football fans. It's that time again. It's time for the first and long college football show. That's right, you're in the right spot. Thank you so much for joining us. We're ready to talk some week 13 of college football. I hope you're ready for that. Seems like the season has absolutely flown by. Here we are, November 20th, um, 2023, and the picture is starting to clear up, but we are not done yet. We are not done yet, and we're ready to break down some big games. One of which is the biggest game I think of the year so far. Um, I want to welcome in all our new subscribers. We've had last week was a big week. A lot of y'all are new. We wanted to welcome you all in and thank you for supporting the show. That means a lot to us, and it's not lost on us how much of a privilege it is to come on here and talk football with you all. So definitely not lost on us that you could be getting your news somewhere else, and we're so happy that you're here getting it because we are just college football fans like you after all. And if you haven't subscribed to the show, please do so. It's a great way to support the show. Doesn't cost anything. We're not making anything off of this. We're doing this absolutely for free, just
Yeah,
because we want to talk football. Yeah, well, maybe eventually one day, right? One can dream. One can dream,
that's
and you
not
know
why
what?
we're doing it, though. I think
That
that's
sure would make
important.
our wives a little happier,
Yeah.
because Lord knows there's sacrifices that are to be made. But hey, you know what? We just love college football that much, and we're so glad that you're here with us. Hit the like on the video. Like I said, hit the subscribe. Grab somebody else's phone and hit subscribe if you have to. Don't really care how it gets done. Just make it happen. That's what college football fans do for one another. We hang in there for one another. Mason, how are you tonight? We're getting ready to break down some games. How you feeling?
It's rivalry week. That's easy for me to say. Rivalry week. Man, I
We're
can't
off to
believe
a hot start here.
that's right. Man, I honestly, I just can't believe that it's already here. The season came and went. The first and longs, first full season. We started back in July. I know not everybody's been with us from the get go. But
Understandable.
yeah, understandable. Um, I wouldn't have watched my first video either. so,
No.
but we've had a lot of fun, man. This has been a great year. And I hope that y'all know it doesn't end with the season, right? Diehard college football fans don't stop paying attention to college football when the season's over. That's really where the fun begins and where talking season begins. So I'm excited to break down these games. We've got some fun rivalry games, which add another dimension and another element to the game. And a lot of times you don't really know quite how to judge the game because of that, or at least you're apprehensive to. You may know how to judge it, but it makes you a little bit more apprehensive to play these games like we love to do. But yeah, I'm just ready to break these down, man. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so we've got some great games to break down this week. We've got Ohio State at Michigan. We've got Washington State at Washington. We've got a Friday game, Oregon State at Oregon. We've got Kentucky at Louisville. We've got Alabama at Auburn, and we've got Florida State at Florida. All these, in some way, have got something to do with either a conference championship or a college football playoff spot. And we haven't had that week that's just absolutely all hell break loose and gone crazy. And I don't know if it's going to be this week. Obviously, I don't have some kind of crystal ball to be able to tell you that, but we're going to give you uh, our best looks at these games. We've got all the numbers. The numbers are what they are at this point, and that's not a saying that I really love. But that at this point in the season, we've seen bads and we've seen goods of every single team. We've seen probably the best and probably the worst that we've seen out of these teams, and now we've got to go play our rivals while we're banged up. Everybody's got injuries at this point, so multiple injuries at this point. So, and as Mason talked about, just because the season is coming down to an end doesn't mean that this channel isn't going to be having content coming out. So that's why you got to hit the subscribe button because we've got signing day coming up. We've got just all kinds of things that go on throughout. the off season, as some people call it. We don't treat it that way. That's whenever really that's when everything happens.
Yeah.
For these teams. So it is very important. College football is about talent acquisition, and that happens in the off season, right?
Well, and I think it's important to note that this offseason will be more important than any offseason. There's so much movement happening in college football with
Oh, and the transfer
conference
portal.
realignment, transfer portal,
Yeah.
12-team playoff, and we're all that news is kind of remaining stagnant right now. Nobody's talking about it. But as soon as the
Mhm.
offseason comes, we'll be talking about it. We'll be letting you all know what's going on and what to expect in the 2024 season. So I think that this is a really important offseason coming up.
As we go through these today, guys, y'all shoot us a comment and throw it in the comment section and tell us a score prediction for these games. What you think, or even tell us a game that maybe we're not highlighting today that out of that list that I read just a minute ago. Let us know in the comment section. That's a good way we communicate on the comment section. There's not a comment that goes by that we don't read or we don't respond to. So go ahead and throw those in there and we can all talk about it because other people chime in on them too. So that's been my favorite part over the last few weeks, and my favorite part of the growth of this channel has been the conversations that have gone on in the comment section, and that really that really motivates me to get in here and make sure that I know what I'm talking about, and make sure that the viewers of this channel know what they're talking about. Let's jump into this. And I'm going to remind everybody real quick, we're about to jump into the Ohio State at Michigan game. If you're watching this live, you're more than likely a subscriber. You're watching the sausage get made here. What we do with these live videos every day or every time that we go live, we go back and we cut them up and we turn them into smaller clips that we put out to these fan bases. Okay. So you joining us live today, in between those game breakdowns, send us your comments and we'll read those in between. And we'll be breaking all the games down. So you're kind of seeing everything happen. You're basically behind the scenes here. Essentially, that's what's going on. So uh, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for watching, and let's enjoy. Let's jump into our first game that we're going to break down today. Noon on Saturday, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Damn, that was pretty good,
That
actually. That
was good.
sounded,
Thank you, Gus.
geez, that sounded just like him. I don't know where, I don't know where that just came from. They visit the Michigan Wolverines. The Michigan Wolverines are a 3.5 point favorite. This line opened up higher than that at about 5, I think, is what it was.
Mhm.
So if you got in on that, there was obviously a considerable amount of money that came in on that line towards Ohio State. And it actually, from what I understand, had gotten down closer to 3, and then some money came in for Michigan and moved it back up to 3.5. So we're back and forth as a betting society, right? We're the money is pretty even here, and I think we're going to settle right around 3. So let's go through some of the numbers. Let's go through some of the numbers, shall we? We shall. Michigan this year is obviously undefeated, and everybody knows how good this defense is. And I'm going to go ahead and read some of these defensive stats because I think that is absolutely the highlight of this team. Yards per game given up 216. That's second in the FBS. That's amazing. That is very, very good. Rushing yards per game allowed 90. That's ninth. Okay. Spoiler alert, nothing defensively is outside of the top 10 for this team. I mean, nothing is outside of the top 10. Uh, they're first in passing yards allowed per game at 126. And points per game allowed, average of 9 points per game allowed. Incredible. A single digit. A single digit there. JJ McCarthy has had a decent year, but something that we've talked about here recently as we kind of transition into this offense. I mean, as I said, there's not a ton to break down this defense. I mean, seriously, other than last week, Maryland kind of throwing the ball around on them, there hadn't been much of that. There hadn't been much of that, and they gave up like no rushing yards last week. So I'm not so sure that wasn't just part of the plan. We'll just dare them to throw the ball. But going into the offense, J.J. McCarthy's 2,335 yards so far this year. The last 3 weeks, he has not thrown a touchdown, though. And, if you combine his yardage over the last couple of weeks, I think he's thrown like 200 yards, not per game, total. So whenever we broke down the Michigan and Maryland game that happened this past week, Michigan won that game 31-24 if you missed it. One possession ball game, and it was as close as it looked. I mean, it really was. And J.J. McCarthy looked really bad, threw a really bad interception. And this is just really, really bad timing because Michigan fans were just telling us that they don't have to throw the ball. They didn't have to throw the ball against Penn State. But I'm telling you right now, in that game that they played last week, they would have preferred to been able to throw the ball.
Yeah.
Okay. He was 12 of 23 for 141 yards and a pick, no touchdowns. So, I mean, that's obviously not very good, and it's not going to get it done coming up this week, I don't think either. So let's kind of look through Michigan's schedule for just a minute. Listen to these opponents, Mason. And I know you already know, but as in Mason, I'm speaking to you, the crowd, through Mason. They've played East Carolina. They won 30-3. UNLV 35-7. Bowling Green 31-6. Rutgers 31-7. Nebraska 45-7. Minnesota 52-10. Indiana 52-7. Michigan State 49-0. Purdue 41-13. Penn State 24-15, and then Maryland 31-24. I mean, just listen to the front part of that. I mean, East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State, Purdue. That is horrible.
Yeah.
That is one of the worst schedules that I've ever seen for a CFP contender up to that point of the season. Then they played Penn State, and you got to give them their props. They did what they needed to do against Penn State. With that being said, no style points involved. I mean, it was like they were bringing in defensive tackles to play offensive line, bringing in extra offensive linemen, and they just crammed it down their throat. It was ugly, but they won. And at this point in the season, all Michigan needs to do is win, right? You want to kind of break down the Michigan side of this, Mason, and tell me what your thoughts are on this, and then let's kind of go into Ohio State, and we'll give our game predictions. How about that? That sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. I want to start with their schedule, kind of start where you left off there. For as much flack as Michigan's been given for their schedule, and it is bad. You just went through it. There's no hiding it. I'm not here to tell you that it's actually better than you think, but I don't think that Ohio State's is really that much better, right? You add the Notre Dame game, that's certainly better than anybody else on they have the Penn State, the same game in Penn State, but and then Notre Dame is better than any other team on Michigan's schedule. But outside of that, they look the same, right? And I don't think that Notre Dame is a game that exactly wows me, anymore. At the time, it was a big game, but Notre Dame's pretty average, top 25, yeah, okay. But they don't wow me like I thought that they would. So I think it's important to note that as well. These two teams have really had similar schedules, and I don't think that it gets talked about enough from the Ohio State perspective. For Michigan, we've come to expect them to have a great defense for the past few seasons now. And while they, haven't played anybody, they do pass the eye test defensively. Now, I could give you all sorts of stats, and those stats might suggest that Michigan has an edge in this game, but I don't think any of the stats from the previous games will give us a real idea of what will happen in this game. The Wolverines were challenged on the road last week against Maryland and were forced to pass the ball, unlike what we saw the previous week against Penn State, who struggled to get anything going offensively to really threaten Michigan, and forcing them to pass. What happened when Michigan was tested enough to warrant actually passing the ball more than 8 times was McCarthy, as you mentioned, had his worst game of the season going 12 for 23, 141 yards and an interception, no touchdowns. Michigan in this game, Michigan's not going to be able to rely on Blake Corum to run the ball 38 times. He had 28 carries last game. He scored 2 touchdowns, right? That's not going to happen against Ohio State. Ohio State is not last year's Ohio State. They have a much better defense. They're going to force Michigan to throw the ball in this game, and McCarthy absolutely has to play better this week. This is a much improved Ohio State defense, and in order for Michigan to have a chance to win, we've got to see better play from McCarthy in this game, and he might have to do that without his best receiver in Roman Wilson. His status is still questionable this weekend. He left last week, and he's listed as questionable. So we'll see. He's at least not 100%. I think we can pretty confidently say. But if to me, for Michigan to win this game, McCarthy's got to protect the football, right? First of all, and I think if he throws for at least 200 yards, I think that Michigan wins this game. And I do think that it's that simple. But
Yeah.
that's what I got for Michigan, at least.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. Part of what I'm getting at when I read that schedule, out of those teams, I really can't even pick out which one is the best passing offense that they've seen. And not to mention the passing offense that Michigan sees every day in practice is their own. We haven't seen them up against, and look, you said, just like you said it, the schedule is very similar. Notre Dame is kind of the odd team out. I believe Wisconsin is the odd team out as well. Neither one of those can throw the football,
right?
So you could say the same for Ohio State, but Ohio State has something that Michigan doesn't have, and that's Maserati Marv, right?
Yeah.
1,093 yards on the year, and honestly, kind of a quiet 1,093 yards, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a 1,000-yard receiver, is every team doesn't have a 1,000-yard receiver, y'all. So that's more rare than what you think. Honestly, even in today's college football, those are well sought after players, and for Ohio State to have that on their side, I think is a very big deal in this game. Let's jump into Ohio State and let's look at the numbers here. Let's start off defensively because we talked about Michigan and how stout they were defensively. Ohio State, these numbers don't look as good, but man, they're very, very good. Very, very comparable. Yards per game, 240 per game. That's third in the country. Rushing yards allowed per game, 108. That's top 25. That's 21st. Passing yards per game allowed 131. That's second. And points per game, 9.3. That's second in FBS, right behind Michigan there. Excuse me. So Michigan got the number 1 scoring defense in the country. Ohio State, number 2. Offensively, 419.4 yards per game is actually 37th best, man. Some of these numbers actually kind of surprised me. The passing yards per game, 273.8. That's top 25 for Ohio State. Okay. Points per game, 33.6. That's top 25. So I feel like on the Michigan side, you've got a better defense. Obviously, I think is the numbers are comparable, but clearly Michigan has the edge defensively. But defense don't play defense. Defense plays offense, and I think that this Ohio State team is the best passing team that Michigan's seen all year, and this is the best offense that Michigan's seen all year. And I think Ohio State is a little bit more battle tested. I'm probably gonna be riding with the Ohio State Buckeyes to cover that spread. Look, y'all, the winner of this game, I think, is a coin flip. This game hasn't come down to like a field goal the last few years or anything. I think it will this time. I think it's coming down to like a field goal. I think that number is right on. I think I would lean with Ohio State and the points there to cover, but I don't know that I can pick them to win it, but I guess I might as well. I'm gonna go ahead and jump out there. I'm gonna pick Ohio State to win this game.
Yeah.
I think they got the difference maker that's necessary, and I think this run game has been rejuvenated a bit. I feel like Henderson is kind of catching a groove a little bit right now. He had a nice week last week. Um, Egbuka had a nice little week last week. But we got some threats on this offense that maybe are about to emerge here at the end and give Ohio State some momentum going into the Big Ten championship game and the playoff. Give me Ohio State.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. So I gave you, my perspective on how Michigan can get it done this weekend. Let me give you my idea of how Ohio State gets it done. So I think it's pretty simple, right? I mentioned that McCarthy is kind of the catalyst in this game for Michigan. He's also the catalyst in this game for Ohio State, but for a different reason, because I think that defense has got to prevent McCarthy from having a great game. Get pressure on him, create those off balance throws, and really the one time that the Michigan offensive line, which is really good, but the one time they were really tested against Penn State, they gave up 7 tackles for a loss, including 1 sack. And that was in a game where their quarterback McCarthy just threw the ball 8 times,
Barely
and they
threw it.
still had 7 tackles for a loss. Right? He's not holding on to the football. That's running the football. So they were getting in the backfield. I would say that Penn State has a better pass rush than Ohio State, but they're not that far apart, But so for this 2-time Joe Moore Award offensive line, for as good as they have been, when they were tested against a similar defensive line, they did not perform well. So if Ohio State's D can perform at that same level, I think that will set up the offense well for success. And at that point, Kyle McCord just needs to deliver. So as much as I don't like to say this game's going to rely on the quarterback, which quarterback plays the best, right? I do think that there's a strong case to be made in this game that the first quarterback to get to 200 yards probably wins this game, right? I think that, more than any other game that I've broken down this year, that seems to be the case. And like you mentioned, Mark, McCord has the weapons, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got this wide receiver unit, which is quite possibly the best overall unit in college football. He certainly has arguably the best overall player in college football and Marvin Harrison. But, you couple that with Egbuka, who has been injured for a lot of the season, and he's
Mm-hmm.
now this will be his 4th game back from injury. He's gotten better and better. Had, I think, 5 catches last week. So maybe we're seeing him at his healthiest that he's been all season. So if they can get those 2 guys going, I think that Ohio State's going to be able to win this game. I think it's going to be a little bit. I think that this will be a 1-score game, but my prediction is that Ohio State gets their revenge this week, wins a close game, but I think they win at 24-17. It'll be low scoring. I like the under in this game. 2 really good defenses, probably 2 top 5 defenses when the season's said and done. So I like the under play most, but I also think that Ohio State on the money line has good value, and of
Mm-hmm.
course I'm picking them to cover.
Yeah, and we'll be doing our betting show on Friday. So anybody watching this, if you're into that type of thing, tune in Friday for our best bets on our Between the Lines segment.
Thursday night.
Thursday, excuse me. Freudian slip. We used to do it on Friday. But I agree. I think that the difference in this game is going to be Ohio State testing those outside corners for Michigan. We saw Maryland have some success with that last week. They were able to launch some balls. They threw for about 300 yards, and I think Kyle McCord, while I don't think he can throw for 300 on this squad, I think he can. I think he can hit that 200-yard mark. I really do. So, man, this is a big game, dude. This is they call it the game, and this year they should call it the big game because it's the biggest game of the year, and cannot wait to see it. That one comes on at noon on Saturday. All right, guys, let's go into our next one here. What do we have next? Washington State at Washington. Washington State at Washington. The Apple Cup. I like that. Saturday at 4:00. Washington is a 16.5 point favorite. Woo, big spread. Big
Mhm.
spread on the rivalry game. Over under at 67.5. Washington is obviously coming off a gutty performance, a gut check Saturday, as some might call it, where they won 22-20 in a torrential downpour at Oregon State. Um, we highlighted that game earlier this week. We reacted to it. You can go back and check that. But you know, I thought it was a pretty good win considering the conditions and um, I feel like they defied the odds a bit. They won a game maybe they weren't supposed to. In some cases, definitely Vegas thought they weren't supposed to win. Vegas had Oregon State favored. And Washington has played some close games this year, Mason. Kind of got the TCU thing from last year going on over
Mhm.
the last few weeks. And our Washington fan base, man, I'm sure that they have just had some sweaty Saturdays.
Yeah.
Um, and that that's what having a good college football team to root for is all about. And Washington fans know that as good as anybody. They've had a good team the last couple of years, but let's we can jump into these numbers and I'm going to kind of highlight the Washington defense here because the Washington offense is really good, guys. A newsflash: if you're just joining us, if you just crawled out of a cave and you haven't paid any attention to college football this year, Washington is the number one passing offense in the country. 354 yards per game. That's actually come down some, and they're still number one in in the country in passing yards per game. But we'll go with the defense first, and I'll come back and I do want to talk about that rushing offense for a minute. But defensively, this Washington crew is allowing 392.8 yards per game. That's 101st in the country. And the way that's divvied out is through rushing yards. They give up on average 141 yards per game. That's 49th in the country. Passing yards per game, 251.8. That's 121st. And then they average giving up 23.2, which is 49th in the country. So kind of a bend don't break style, I guess you could say, for Washington, but they definitely allow teams to get up and down the field, and it seems like a timely defense. I think is what we said in our reaction video. They had timely stops last week, and that's what we've seen time and time again. Um, I think there are some playmakers on that defense, but overall, they've got some work to do as far as recruiting and things like that this year. Um, Now let's move over to the Washington State. I want to kind of highlight this offense for a minute. Yards per game, 445. That's 18th in the country. Rushing yards, they're ranked 125th at 95.9. Not a good rushing team. More than happy to just step back, throw the ball. Cam Ward has got a bunch of yards this year, 3,415. He's had a good year. It's been up and down, but overall the numbers have been pretty good. He had a turnover bug there for a little bit, and we'll kind of highlight that. Um, Passing yards per game, they're 349.6 and that's second in the country. So we've got the number one passing offense and the number two passing offense in this game right here. Um, and then 32 points per game, that's 37th in the country, which is not great considering those offensive numbers there. But defensively, man, they give up almost just as much as what they gain. I
Mhm.
mean, that yards per game, 116th. Rushing yards per game, 104th. Passing yards per game, 120th. 20 points per game, 27.1. That's 79th in the country. So this Washington State defense is porous. I mean, they give up pretty much any way you want it, you got it. Unless you're Colorado last week, because they absolutely donkey stomped Colorado. Just made Prime look like he was ready to cry on the sideline. Um, so with that being said, I feel like Washington State does come into this game with a little bit of momentum after that explosion last week. So now we kind of looked at some of the numbers. What are some of the numbers that you're looking at, and what's your feel for this game this week in the Apple Cup?
Well, I think first of all, you have to look at the motivation in this game. There's motivation in the Apple Cup beyond the rivalry for both of these teams here. For Washington, they're playing to finish out their season undefeated, right? And they've got a chance to get into the college football playoff if they can beat likely Oregon, next. Well, yeah, I guess you can say next week at this point. Which getting into the college football playoff now, it looks like more of a possibility as Florida State just lost their starting quarterback. That's something that you have to factor in now. They're not competing with them as much as they were, prior to Travis's injury. So the Huskies are in a great position to win out and make the playoffs. And while Washington State would love nothing more than to beat Washington and spoil those hopes and aspirations, they too have something to play for, because if Washington State wins this game, they improve to 6 wins and become bowl eligible. So there's motivation on both sides here that I think is important to kind of point out. But the crucial matchup to watch here for me, and this is no surprise, but it's the defensive side of the ball, right? what what player specifically, what defense comes up and makes stops, and what player specifically is going to be able to come up with a couple of big plays and force the opposing team to punt or force turnovers. You already mentioned this. I'm going to go over this really quickly, though. Washington's offense ranks number 1 in pass offense. Washington State is 2. Washington's total offense is 8th with 482.8 yards per game. And while the Cougars rank just 48th in total offense, and but that passing attack that the Cougars have, I think that still poses a pretty significant threat to Washington's defense that seems to play with that bend but don't break sort of mentality that we've seen for them all year. We've seen them come up and make plays. They've been very opportunistic on the defensive side of the ball and gotten the turnovers when they need to and gotten the big stops when they need to. But what happens if they're not making those big plays, right? I kind of wonder if luck's been on their side a little bit. Huskies fans, don't jump all over me. We have a huge Washington fan base. I'm just anxious to see them get a little bit more tested. It seems like there's always an out for them, and they kind of wiggle their way out of some pretty stressful situations. And that's the mark of a good defense too. Don't get me wrong, but again, I'm wondering how much of that is luck and how much of that is them having playmakers, going out there and just making plays. So these defenses are the big question marks in this game, ranking 83rd and 84th in total defense, right? So it's kind of, these teams are very similar, right? First and second in passing defense, or excuse me, in passing offense, and 83rd and 84th in total defense. I happen to think that Washington is a good bit better on defense than this statistic would suggest, but again, they have given up a lot of yards and found ways to make big stops. So what happens when the playmakers don't get the big stops? Scheduling here is interesting too, as Washington is coming off of 3 intense games in a row. They went to USC and won by 10, beat Utah at home by a touchdown, and narrowly escaped Corvallis with a 2-point win last week. Do they have one more in them? Right. That's kind of the question: is how much more is left in the tank? Especially knowing that likely Oregon is lurking in the conference championship next week. How much are they looking ahead to that? It's interesting from that scheduling perspective. And then you've got Wazoo that went on a 6-game losing streak after starting off red hot on offense, but looked back to form last week against Colorado where they scored 56 points. So a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde there for Washington State. What version of their offense do we get? Are they going to put up 40 points this week? I mean, or are they going to lay an egg like they have and put up 17? We don't know what we're going to get out of Cam Ward in this offense. This game to me has all the makings of a trap game. You add in the rivalry aspect, and I think this game is going to be pretty close. Give me the underdogs to keep it closer than the experts think, but ultimately, I think that they do lose the game. But Give me Washington 44, Washington State 33. I like the overplay in this one. Again, I mean, it's pretty easy to see. I don't think that this number is high enough. The over under at 67.5. Two pretty bad defenses, two really good offenses that like to pass the ball. Also, another thing to think about is how fast Washington State plays. They don't take their time. You know, last week you saw Oregon State, who's very methodical, they run the ball more. They want to secure time of possession and kind of rule that stat. Washington State doesn't play that way. There's going to be a lot of possessions in this game, so for that reason, I like the overplay. But I do think that Washington still comes out with the win and a 2-score win at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that prediction a lot. I think that Washington State is at a clear disadvantage in this game, and the fact that they're not even going to try to run the ball. They're not. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they got a running back named Nakia Watson. I'm sure nobody's heard of him. 257 yards for the year. That's the leading rusher
Yeah.
for the team. They've rushed for like 500 yards this year, and when you're talking about we're in week 13, you know that's just not even many attempts, not even trying to run the football. I don't think Washington State is going to be able to stop Dylan Johnson. I think he's going to have a really, really big day. I think that he runs for about $150 in this game, and I think that's the difference maker in this game. I keep saying it with this Washington team. For Washington to hit covers and win ball games without stress, they've got to be able to run the football consistently. Okay, the average rushing yards for the year per game 124. That's 103rd, as we said, in the country. If this Washington team could run for 150 yards a game, they would be damn near unbeatable. They would be really, really hard to beat.
Mm-hmm.
Their worst offensive performances have came when they haven't ran the ball well. That's a clear advantage in this game. They have it's green light go. Simon says run it. Okay. This Washington defense sucks. Washington State, excuse me, defense sucks.
Yeah.
It's a green light. It's time to go. So that's what I want to see from Washington this weekend. They're just fine getting a 14-point win here, 10-point win. That's going to be fine.
Yeah.
That's all you need. You just got to win this game. I don't think you want it to be close. I don't think you want a stressful game going into that Friday night. I mean, it's going to be a short week heading into the Pac-12 championship. That game's on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we got corrected on the comment section. It's in Las Vegas, the championship, and we also got corrected. We don't know that it's against Oregon yet.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
We're going to break down the Oregon game here in just a few minutes, but there are some things that could happen. I don't think it's likely, obviously, but there is a way that Washington could be playing Arizona in
Mm-hmm.
the conference championship game. And like I said, don't think that's happening, but it's a possibility. Not something Washington even needs to worry about anyway at this point. But just a little side note on that. I like your call, Mason. I'm right there with you. I'm going to take Washington State to cover the 16.5.
Mm-hmm.
But barely. And I'm actually, in reality, I'm not going to bet this game. I don't think. And I'll tell y'all that right now. I don't know if I would bet this game because there is a chance that Washington just scores 63 points this weekend, getting tuned up and ready for that championship game. I mean, there is a possibility. So if you are going to play something, I agree with you, Mason. Play the over, and that's probably something I'm going to go ahead and hit right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because that number is probably going to be ticking up as the week goes on, don't you think?
I do think I did look at a model before we hopped on, and it was right around 61. What is what it spit out for the total on that game? So statistically, I think there's a reason to suggest that it could be actually under the 67.5. So maybe Vegas kind of sticks with where it's at, but I don't see anybody slowing down in this game. It's going to be all downhill.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. Look, and you talk about motivation, something that kind of slips people's minds. Washington State has 5 wins.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not guaranteed a bowl game right now. They might go even if they don't win, but they might not.
Yeah.
If they win that 6th game, they're going to a bowl game. So this is their Super Bowl. This is it to get those extra 15 practices, to get early signees in there and getting them practicing with the crew. This is a big deal for Washington State as well as Washington. So definitely motivation on each side. Cannot wait to watch this game at 4 o'clock on Saturday. And thank you all so much for tuning in live. We certainly do appreciate that. If you haven't already, like the video. And also, if you haven't already, subscribe so that you know whenever we have content going available. We are making all our preview videos right now, and you're watching us do that. So we appreciate you tuning in and doing that. We've got plenty more football to talk, so don't go anywhere.
I'm going to get to these comments real quick.
Yeah, let's read those comments. And put your comments in the comment section and give us your score predictions for the games. We'd love to hear them, or tell us a game that we need to talk about, and we can get to that at the end. We'd be more than happy to talk about it. Swither 17. Washington's defense is just as bad as Washington State's. Ooh, yikes!
I don't know about that one, and
Shots
our Husky
fired.
fans, our Huskies fans are going to be all over that. I think if any of them
fired.
come in the live chat, yeah, we'll see about that. I think we covered the defense pretty heavily, so I hope you got your answer there.
Hey, Washington State may be feeling good after last week, but I'm telling you right now, that was a shiz performance from Colorado. Woo wee, stunk it up, and I mean, cost your boy some money. That was bad. Yeah, Eric Stockton, the over man. I'm gonna call you Eric Over. Washington needs a strong win heading in with Oregon in the Oregon game, I think is what he was trying to say. Saying that Washington will beat WSU and cover the spread easily. And Eric just commented again. Eric Over 55-10.
He went under.
Did he?
Yeah. Because it's 67.5. Come on, Eric. You gotta.
No, it's 62.
I
think it's came down since we originally made our list or whatever.
Maybe I missed that one. I thought I had updated all of these.
I had looked at Bet Now before we started. Not a sponsor of the show. Could be. Could be
you.
Could be you. All right. Let's jump in to another game breakdown. Let's get our banner ready. Minute mark. Friday, 8:30 p.m. Oregon State at Oregon. Oregon is a 13.5-point favorite, Mason. Over under 62.5. It's the Civil War. Can we say that? I guess we can say that. We can say whatever we want. It's friggin' YouTube.
It's weird. This game's in Oregon and nowhere near where the Civil War took place. We're calling it the Civil War.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, what's up with that? Oregon is obviously a big favorite, 13.5-point favorite. Oregon State is coming off, I would think, a pretty deflating loss at home against Washington. I feel like Oregon State fans, maybe they feel the same way I do. I don't know. Why in the world is Oregon State not running the football every down in that game?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand. You got DJU, you got Martinez. Why are you not running the football every play in that game? I mean, I just thought they took way too many deep shots and forced some of them into double and triple coverage. Just not a great game plan. I didn't feel like for that Washington game that they had last week. Oregon State does not, I don't feel like have the motivation that Oregon is going to have in this game. Oregon, as we mentioned a few minutes ago in our live video here, but if you're just joining us for the breakdown, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe. We'd love to have you at First and Long College Football. Oregon has not solidified their spot in the Pac-12 championship yet. Okay. There are things that needs to be done. There is business that needs to be taken care of here. So they get the Beavers at home, and Oregon's numbers this year, Mason, are just off the charts. We're going to go through some of these team rankings for Oregon here, and it's pretty amazing what Dan Lanning has done with this Ducks group. Done a really really good job, and some could argue they could be undefeated. Right? Obviously, they could. It was a 3-point loss they had. I mean, a couple bounce of balls, and they could have beat Washington, and maybe are going to have their chance to avenge that loss, but offensively, second best in yards per game at 543. That's, like I said, second in the country now. Okay, not in the Pac-12. They're number one in the Pac-12, second in the country. Rushing yards per game, 196.6. That's 21st in the FBS. Passing yards per game, 347.2. That's third. Points per game, 46.5, and that's second in the country. Very, very potent offense. Bo Nix is obviously a Heisman candidate. I am pretty daggum sure your boy will be in New York, at least for the ceremony. I don't know that he'll win it, but he's got just as good a shot as anybody, I think, at this
I think
point.
he's got the best shot, honestly.
Yeah, he might, and we'll see what happens, this weekend because he could definitely ruin it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Defensively, not as good as the offensive numbers, but by God, they're good. Rushing yards per game, 96.2. That's 11th in the country. That's going to come in handy this weekend, Mason, against Martinez in this offensive line, because we know what Oregon State's plan is, right? It's line up, run the football, hit you with play action, deep shots. I mean, we just saw it last week. And they're running that thing come hell or high water, monsoon, hail, tornado. That's their offensive game plan, as we saw last week. So that rush defense is going to come in handy. Average giving up 191.7 passing yards per game. That's 36 in the FBS. So if you kind of want to look at this team, this defense, if there is a propensity to give up yards, it's usually through the air, or more so through the air, I guess I should say. But me and my dad, shouts out to my dad, if you're watching this. We were talking about this whole situation with Oregon last night, and I said, pull up Oregon's schedule. I wanna hear who they've played, because when the year started, I remember looking at Oregon's schedule and I said, man, that's kind of tough. That's kind of tough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see how tough it sounds now. Portland State at Texas Tech. Obviously that sounded like a lot tougher game in the beginning of the year, right? Hawaii, that even sounded like a tougher game at the beginning of the year. They're hot dog water. Colorado, didn't know it at the time. Thought they were pretty decent going into that game, didn't we? Hot dog water. Stanford, hot dog water. At Washington, lost that game. Washington State, they beat 38-24, so beat them by 14 in that one. At Utah, 35-6, that's a good win. Cal, 63-19, that's what you got to do to Cal. USC, 36-27, that was a disappointing win if there was one. That one was disappointing. And then at Arizona State, they absolutely buried them alive in the first half last week and looked very good doing it. Bo Nix had 6 touchdowns in the first half. That is not a strong schedule, man.
Mm-mm.
And the hardest game they played, obviously, was Washington, and they lost that one. So I am still, the jury is still out for me a little bit on this Oregon team. I earlier this week, I was bullish on them, and now the more I look at this team, I just need to see more. It's not that they haven't done what they're supposed to do. These numbers are incredible. They've beat all these teams that they were supposed to beat. They lost to a really good team. That's okay. That happens. But I still feel like there's something to prove here with this Oregon team. And I don't know that Oregon State has got the guys that's going to be able to test this Oregon team. I don't think so. Obviously, Vegas doesn't think so either with this line. But I think it's really going to come down to if Oregon State can hit a big shot in this game. They weren't able to do it against Washington. They never hit a big shot. We know they're going to have some success running the football. That's going to happen. They'll have 100 yards or so, at least. But are they going to be able to hit the the deep shot. That's something that they left to be desired last week, and I think kind of the the I guess keys to victory for Oregon State in this game. Um, with all that being said, Oregon State offensively, like I said, they like to run the football, top 25 at 192 yards per game. Um, yards per game, they're top 25. Not great passing, 240 yards per game. I think it's really going to come down to Oregon playing a clean game and Oregon being able to throw on this team. There's not a soul on the field for Oregon State that can cover Troy Franklin. I know
Mhm.
that. Troy Franklin is got to be the leading rush or receiver, 1,221 yards this year.
Yeah.
Woo-wee. And Tez Johnson at 805 for Oregon. So in that aspect, I think Oregon's going to be able to do what they want through the air as long as Nix ain't trying to, force something or they're trying to go for fourth downs or 2-point conversions every time. I think they're going to be able to cover this spread. What do you think?
Yeah, last year, Oregon was favored in this game too. They were ranked, I think, 8th in the country going into this game. And I don't know if you remember, I went back and watched the highlights from that game because I couldn't quite remember how it went. And I know why now because Oregon was up by 17 points in that game, and Oregon State came back and beat them. The final score was 38-34, and if I'm not mistaken, that kept Oregon out of the Pac-12 championship. Which inevitably led to Utah winning it. So, again, Oregon is almost a 2-touchdown favorite in this game this year. Now they get the game at home, so I think that has I think that makes this a little bit of an easier win for them. But it doesn't get much easier than this. They have an 81% chance of winning this game, according to ESPN. The Ducks, I think they just pretty much have to play like they've been playing and don't turn the ball over. Play kind of safe, and I think that they're going to be just fine. But I'm not ready to say that they can't be beaten. I think there's a big difference, in should and can't, right? So how can Oregon State pull off the upset again this year? First, they have to win the turnover battle. Last week, the Beavers had 3 turnovers against Washington and lost a game in which they outrushed and outgained the Huskies. Turnovers were a huge reason for that loss. I know weather played a role in the turnovers, but Washington, they had to play in the same elements and only had 1 turnover. And weather should not be a factor in this game, according to the forecast at this moment. Oregon does a great job of protecting the football. Bo Nix has thrown just 2 interceptions all season, which is phenomenal. So finding turnovers won't be easy, but true freshman cornerback Jermod McCoy could be the catalyst for the Beavers defense. He should get a lot of attention this way, his way. And I'm wondering if he can't get an interception or at least be effective, right? He's going to have to go up against, Ferguson and whoever's playing opposite Troy Franklin, more than likely. And how effective can he be? That's a tough spot for a true freshman, but he's proven to be kind of up to the task to this point of the season against some other really good wide receivers as well. Secondly, Oregon State needs to win the line of scrimmage and affect the quarterback on defense. The Beavers are 7th in the country in sacks, and Oregon is 1st in sacks allowed. So it's good on good. Let's watch that battle in the trenches and see kind of how that tells us, that'll tell us kind of how the game is being played out. Oregon statistically has the edge, but they have not faced a pass rush quite like this one. Andrew Chatfield Jr. has 9 sacks on the year for Oregon State. So can the Ducks contain him and the rest of those talented linebackers? They've got throughout the defense and just the front 7, I think they've got like 36 sacks this year already. So which is just awesome. Lastly, if they can win the line of scrimmage, that should lead to more yards on the ground. So Damian Martinez cannot rush for under 100 yards, and the Beavers still win this game. He's got to get going in the run game and in the passing game. He's a weapon in both, really. That would really work nicely to set up the play action, and maybe you get Velling more involved. He had 1 catch last week, and hasn't scored a touchdown in 3 games, and he's a huge weapon for Oregon State. I think that they're at I think that Oregon State is at its best when he's getting about 6 to 8 targets in a game. So let's see if they kind of rely on their tight ends a little bit more in this game. Overall, I don't think you're going to find a bigger matchup on Friday, but big doesn't always mean competitive. As much as I love Jonathan Smith and this Oregon State team, I don't think that they have the dudes to keep up this week. I think I'm taking your words verbatim almost, Mark. But Oregon is they're looking like a playoff team right now, and as long as they stay focused on this game and they don't get ahead of themselves and looking for redemption against the Huskies, I think they can take care of business. And I like them to cover at home. You mentioned, Mark, that they still have a lot to prove to you, and to a lot of other to the committee, maybe, when you look at their strength of schedule, they got to keep putting away teams that they're better than. And I think they'll continue to do that again this week. So give me Oregon to win 39-26. I also like the over 62 in this game.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Look, it's going to come down, I think, too, for Oregon State. We had kind of broke this part of the game down last week whenever they were facing off with Washington. If Oregon State can't get to the quarterback, it's problems.
Yeah.
It's problems down the field. If they're not going to coverage sack you. That's not going to happen. They're not going to cover long enough to let your linebackers have time to get there, or defensive line. You're not going to be able to bring 3 with this Oregon State defense. It's not happening. So they have to be able to blitz Bo Nix and get him on the ground. That is, it has to happen. Oregon is 52% for the year on third down and 68% on fourth down this year. And they've went for on fourth down 19 times. Okay. So, and on the other hand of that, I talked about them getting Bo Nix on the ground. They don't know. Oregon doesn't allow sacks, man. They've only been sacked 5 times this year total. That's incredible. That's got to be number 1 in the country.
Yeah, that is. That was one of the stats I had.
Because I haven't heard a total that low of any team that we've talked about at this point in the season. Not anywhere close. I think Washington has given up about 7 or so. I may be wrong on that, but this Oregon State team has been good at getting to the quarterback. They have 35 sacks on the year and have created a negative 231 yards on those sacks. So that's kind of a battle within the battle there as well. Can Oregon State get home against Bo Nix and at the same time keep him in the pocket, because we all know he can move around with those legs. So it definitely interesting game. Can't wait to see it. Tons of motivation for Oregon. We kind of made a mistake on one of our past videos saying that Oregon had clinched their spot in Las Vegas. They have not. They have not clinched it yet. They need to win, okay, and they're in. If Oregon State was to beat Oregon and then Arizona beat Arizona State, Arizona goes in place of Oregon. So I think that almost works to Oregon's advantage here. That Washington this week doesn't. They're already thinking about Oregon in at least some capacity, okay? But Oregon cannot afford to overlook Oregon State. Otherwise, they don't even get to their Pac-12 championship, much less the playoff. And I trust Dan Lanning will have his team mentally prepared for that. All right. Let's make sure we don't have any comments. How y'all doing over here? Make sure everybody's behaving. No, we're good. All right. Let's keep it moving, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out with us. We are going through some of these awesome matchups, and I can't wait to see these suckers. And I can't wait to bet this week, because I've really like some of these numbers.
I already put in a ton of bets. Like I like so many of these numbers, and I'm afraid that they're going to move. I actually went back because I did see on Bet Now it's at 62 the Washington State and Washington game. I went ahead and put in $10 on that on the over 62. On that. It was 62 on Bet Now, but the site that I was looking at, which pulls like aggregate betting data, was at 67.5. So on other betting sites, it's higher.
Wow.
So I think that's really good value on Bet Now.
I
if
will
that's
hit.
true. But that's based off of one site. Maybe they've got it wrong. You never know. But
Yeah. Well, we like that 62 number, so go over to Bet Now and tell them that we sent you. And we will not get any credit for it. Uh, let's go into our next game. Saturday, noon o'clock, Kentucky at Louisville. That's right. It's the Louisville Cardinals who are chasing greatness. They are trying to keep it alive. They've got that loss to Pitt, so they're not undefeated, but they're trying to keep their season alive and take care of their rival in the Kentucky Stoops, right? So Louisville is favored by 6.5 points in this game. They just came off of a really good win against Miami, because that was one of the weird games where Miami actually played well. Right, that doesn't happen every week, but Louisville was dealt that card and they played it and they won the hand. So they stay with only one loss. The one loss being a horrible one to Pitt earlier this year, due to some turnovers in that game. Louisville's favored by 7. Over under 50.5 for this game. Uh, I really, really like the matchup of the passing offense for Louisville versus this Kentucky secondary.
mhm.
This Kentucky secondary has struggled ever since we saw Kentucky play Georgia. I feel like that film got out there and just every team has diced them up ever since. And look, Alabama's a good team, and I'm not trying to like talk trash or whatever, but Jalen Milroe tore this team up through the air, and I don't consider him to be a prolific passer necessarily. And I don't think you'd have to go far to find somebody to agree with that. But um, yards per game offensively, they're 27th in the country. Rushing yards per game, 26th in the country at 186. Passing yards per game, 242. That's 46 in the country. Um, and then points per game, 33.2. That is 27th in the country. Start turnaround for Louisville, as their coach comes back to his alma mater and has really turned things around and got this team in good shape. Um, I'm looking for Jack Plummer to put this game on his back. I think Mississippi State. What am I thinking? Kentucky, I think, is going to load the box up. I think they're going to dare Louisville to run it, and I don't think Louisville's going to do it. I think they're going to just go ahead and try to throw over the crowded box, and I think they can have success doing that. But it's going to be on Jack Plummer's shoulders. Um, Jamari Thrash has been injured. I don't know what his status is at this point. Have you heard anything about Thrash, Mason?
I don't. They're pretty tight lipped on it. He's day to day game time decision. It'll be that
Hmm.
that sort of
Sure,
coach speak.
sure didn't look anywhere close to 100% last week, as
Hmm.
he had 1 reception and 7 yards. Um, Jack Plummer, on the other hand, last week was 24 of 37 for 308. He did throw 1 interception, but had 3 touchdowns against what is a good Miami defense. You can say what you want. Miami's had some oops moments this year, but they played a good game last week, and Jack Plummer played a very good game last week. There is kind of a look ahead spot here for Louisville, though. I must say. I mean, this is a rivalry game, so I wouldn't think there'd be a look ahead. But I mean, Louisville's not used to going and playing for championship games, Mason. I mean, this is not um, it's not exactly title town in Louisville. So I'm interested to see how they respond to being a favorite and not having to have this game necessarily to still go to that ACC championship game. Um, are they going to be just happy to be there, or are they going all in? Because this Louisville team with one loss, although it is a horrible loss, things could happen this Saturday that could place them in the college football playoff with a win over Florida State here in a couple weeks. And we all know what happened to Jordan Travis. I think the door is wide open. What do you think about this matchup? The Fighting Mark Stoops against the Bird with Teeth.
Yeah, and the Governor's Cup, right? Which I think is just a
The
stupid
Governor.
name. I hate that name.
You said it wrong. Governor.
The Governor's Cup. Uh, Again, hate the name. I'm renaming this the Bur I'm gonna rename this in Kentucky. I think it's more fitting if we call it the Bourbon Bowl, and it has more of a ring to it too.
Damn, that's
That's
good.
That sounds really good, right? And you know, I'm a big whiskey connoisseur, so it makes sense for me.
We've
So,
said it time and time again. We need to be in charge of things like that,
yep,
bowl games. What do we do? That's really good. The Bourbon
yeah,
Bowl.
yeah. I like that too. It took me a while to come up with it, but no.
You thought a lot
um,
about it.
Thought a lot about it. Had to drink a lot of bourbon while I thought about it. But all right. So look, we covered Louisville last week for their game against Miami, and I think a lot of those points remain the same. And it's kind of shocking how like similar this matchup is with Kentucky in a lot of ways. You know, Louisville is a top 25 team in almost every offensive and defensive category except for passing offense and passing defense. So can Kentucky take advantage of Louisville's lackluster passing defense? I don't know. It seems like we've been waiting on Devin Leary and Kentucky's passing attack to get going all season long, and it really just hasn't happened. I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately for Kentucky fans. On top of that, the rushing attack for Kentucky has been on a steady decline ever since they rushed for over 300 yards against Florida. You know, at the time that was eye opening, and everybody in college football was like, "Man, Georgia better watch out," you know, because Kentucky had to face Georgia that next week. But
That was a long
we've
time ago.
that was so long ago. But as it turns out, Florida is just really bad at stopping the run. They had a few weeks up to that point where they looked like they had a really good defense, but
No, not the
we've come
Florida Gators.
we've come to find out that the Gators are pretty bad on defense, and it's specifically at stopping the run. Um,
Ugh.
Defensively, Kentucky is kind of like Louisville in that they are built to stop the run, but there are holes in the passing defense. And you mentioned it, Mark. I agree with you. I think that Louisville is better positioned to take advantage of the weak secondary than Kentucky is to take advantage of them. Kentucky doesn't have the weapons. They don't have a Thrash, which I do think he will play. I looked at a recent injury status in this game, and I don't see him listed as even questionable. So I think there's a good chance that he's playing in this game. To what degree, we don't know, but I think having him in the game, even if he's at 75%, is enough for Louisville to be able to get it done this week. I'm not going to overthink this one too much. Give me Louisville 27, Kentucky 20. For let's see, that's a total of 47. The under would hit in that case, and I think that feels right to me. I don't think that this game gets to 50 overall, and I think it is pretty close. So I wouldn't bet that spread at 6.5. But I like the underplay.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, it's no secret what Kentucky wants to do. They want to run the football. Louisville is set up to defend that. And while Kentucky is very good at defending the run themselves, as far as ranks in the country, I definitely think that Louisville has got the advantage as far as throwing the ball over the top, and they've got the weapons. Kevin Coleman had a good game last week. I suspect that him and Chris Bell will be able to step up as Jamari Thrash is. We saw it. We know he's not 100%. What is he? Is he 90? Is he 95? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said last week, it was clearly a distraction him being on the field because it did not stop this passing offense for hitting 300 yards when they needed to do it against Miami. So I'm with you. Let's don't overthink this thing, man. Give me the Louisville Cardinals, and Louisville Cardinals fans. If you're watching this, hit subscribe. We've been talking Louisville football for the last few weeks, and you haven't even been here. So we want you to come over and join us, join our community, and drop your score prediction into the comment section, and we would love to read it on the show and check that out on Sunday. And thank you so much for watching. Eric Stockton's got a score prediction 34-17. 34-17.
Also, I have to
What?
apologize, Eric, and to anybody else who put their score prediction up in the live chat. I didn't realize that once the live feed is over, we can't go back and view that chat unless we watch the whole thing, you know, the whole
As it goes.
video over again. So I'm writing down these score predictions so that we'll have them for the betting show on. Well, actually, it's not going to be on Thursday this week because that's Thanksgiving. So we're going to have to bump that up to Wednesday.
Well, we'll already be together at Thanksgiving, so we'll just
Well,
we'll
actually,
do it. No, I'm just kidding.
I won't be there. So
What?
yeah, we're hosting Thanksgiving for Lauren's family this year. So
Damn it, boy. All right.
yeah,
Well, I guess I'll have to hang out with the family without you. What the hell? All right. Well, we just told
are we
everybody we're family. So
34-17? I got you. I got you penciled in, Eric. So we'll have that up whenever we do our show. Anybody else got a score prediction? Please comment, and I will write it down. And like I said, we post these during our Between the Lines show. Usually it'll be Thursdays, with Thanksgiving being on Thursday and games being played on Thursday. Doesn't make sense to do a betting show, ahead of that, or it makes sense to do it ahead of that. So we'll have that on Wednesday this week. But I will post your score predictions if you put them up. Give you guys a shout out.
thanks again for watching, guys. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us. All right, let's jump into another score prediction here. Game prediction, game breakdown, whatever you want to call it. Alabama Crimson Tide are a 14.5 point favorite on the road at Auburn. Over under set at 48.5. This one is more commonly known as the Iron Bowl.
That's a
This
good name.
game,
That's a
that,
solid name.
that's a very solid name, and definitely resonates with me as somebody who grew up in the South. Um, this game comes on at 3:30. It's going to be on the Big Eye in the Sky, CBS game of the week for the SEC showdowns. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about what happened to the Auburn Tigers last week, because I think that actually does kind of weigh into this game a bit. Um, have the Auburn Tigers thrown in the towel? They got to 6 wins and then just totally laid an egg out there for everybody to see. Got beat by New Mexico State 31-10. Auburn paid New Mexico State $1.8 million to come whoop that ass. A very, very embarrassing situation there. So, where does that leave us? Who's got the motivation in this game? Very clearly, Alabama is much more motivated in this ball game, and they're a big favorite. These games, sometimes it doesn't matter who's the better team. The scores are close, especially at Auburn when the game's played there. I'm interested to see how the crowd is into this one or not into this one. Um, I think it'll depend on how this game goes early for that. But let's jump into the Alabama Crimson Tide for just a minute. This offense is one that has improved over the year. I don't think there's any denying that. Uh, Yards per game, 381.2. That's only 63rd in the country, though. And eighth in the SEC. So kind of disappointing, I think, obviously, if you're an Alabama fan. And I think we all hold Alabama to a totally different standard than we would, one of these other teams that we're talking about. I mean, but the offenses that Alabama has had in the recent past have been so much better than this that it just really casts a large shadow over this team, I feel like. But offensively, rushing yards per game, 176.3. That's not bad. That's 44th in the country. Passing yards per game, 204.9. That's 79th in the country. And then points per game, 16th in the country at 36.5. So an opportune offense, really, to be able to score that many points with that mediocre production levels at statistically speaking. So pretty opportune offense there for sure. But this team butters the bread with their defense, my friend. This is a good Alabama defense, the best one that we've seen in a few years, I think. 290.6 yards per game given up. That's 17th in the country. 117.9 rushing yards per game. That's 29th in the country. Passing yards per game, 172, 18th. And points per game, 17.4. That's top 15 in the country. So you're top 30 in every category, top 20 in most categories there for this Alabama defense. Jermaine Burton is your leading receiver, 642 yards. And what I think is kind of a lackluster wide receiver room for Alabama. But let's see how that matches up with this Auburn defense that gives up 339.1 yards per game. That's 47th. Rushing yards, 156.5. That's 77th in the country. Passing yards per game, 182.6, 29th in the country. And points per game, 21.5. That's 40th in the country. That's really where the matchup is. It's going to be what can this Auburn Tiger defense do against this Alabama offense? Because it's going to be up to the defense to keep Auburn in this thing, man. That offense is bad, dude. They're ranked 87th in yards a game. They do run the ball decent at 23rd in rushing yards per game, but 120th in the country in passing the ball and 69th in the country points per game at 27.5. So the game plan for Alabama's defense is very, very clear. Stop the run and stop the Auburn Tigers. That's, clear as day. They're not going to be throwing the ball all over the yard, certainly not on this Alabama secondary. So, like I said, it comes down to, can this Auburn defense keep them in the game? They're going to need turnovers, man. They're going to need some turnovers in this one to keep this game even close. And they're going to need to hit a deep shot or two also, which they have not been able to do. So they're going to need to hit a deep shot or two, get a couple turnovers. That's the only keys to victory in my eyes for the Auburn Tigers to hold the Alabama team down here. I think the game plan for Alabama stays what it has been. I think you're going to need to run Jalen Milroe in this game, and I think you're going to need to be able to run the ball efficiently to win this game. I don't trust Jalen Milroe to sit back and throw all over this Auburn secondary. That is the highlight of this team. That is the best unit on this team is the Auburn secondary, and something that we actually touched on in the preseason. The one of the things that we nailed, honestly, was this Auburn secondary. It's good. It is really good, actually. What's your thoughts on this game, and what's your score prediction? And I'll give you mine here in just a second as I'm going to see what you do first.
Well played. Well played.
I was trying to come up with an excuse, but I'm just going to see what you do first.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Hey, so I'm going to start where you started, right? And I'm going to go back to last week with New Mexico State. I think that it's pretty safe to say that Auburn and Hugh Freeze got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, right? I think they were looking ahead. You know, this is his first Iron Bowl. That they are bowl eligible, right? And I'm not saying that they lost the game on purpose or anything like that, but you know they are bowl eligible. So I think that they thought that they'd be able to just beat New Mexico State with their guys versus New Mexico State's guys. But this is Freeze's first Iron Bowl. He's still looking for that marquee win, I think. I don't think it was Arkansas, although that was a pretty great performance as a 2-point underdog to win 48-10. But I don't think that that's his big marquee win that he's looking for. And certainly if he were to beat Nick Saban at Alabama, which is really the reason he was brought into Auburn, right? That would be a marquee win. So you better believe that Hugh Freeze is going to pull out more tricks out of his hat than David freaking Blaine. Like he better have some stuff ready, you know, after that performance. Like
that read option, bro.
Yeah. I mean, have something. I better like I have a feeling we're about to see like a flea flicker, double reverse, halfback pass to Peyton Thorne, like first play of the game. You know, like something crazy. And if we don't see some version of that, I have questions, right? Because you don't give up the New Mexico State game to not be competitive in the Iron Bowl. So don't let really what I'm saying is don't let the New Mexico State game and that $1.8 million be in vain, right? All right, so now the big question I have for this game is, could Alabama now be the ones overlooking the Tigers in preparing for Georgia in the SEC championship game? I think that Auburn is hoping so, right? As they are going to need all the help they can get. But Alabama is playing like a playoff team right now. You know, in the last 3 SEC games, they have won by an average margin of over 18 points. And that was against teams that I would have ahead of Auburn right now, you know. So, and especially you see what they did against Kentucky, which was the worst of the bunch. I still would have Kentucky ahead of Auburn right now. They're pretty similar, but I might give Kentucky the slight edge there. So what can Auburn do to win this game? Well, it's going to take a lot to start. I think that they will need to be at least +2 in the turnover margin, which is something you mentioned. But um, Auburn, statistically, they're averaging exactly 1.5 turnovers per game. They are above average nationally in sacks. So, can they affect Milroe and get him off balance enough to force some turnovers? We've seen the struggles that this offensive line has had against a good pass rush. Now, he has been better about tucking the ball and running the past couple of games when he gets into that sort of trouble.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to ask this defense to bring pressure, force turnovers, but also contain Milroe and avoid letting him extend drives with his legs. I think it may be too much stress on the defense, but if they can do it, that's one key to success. Another key to success is Jarquez Hunter. He's averaging 7.4 yards per carry this month, but I think there is room for him to grow in the passing game. He only has 12 catches on the year, but I think this guy is the best weapon that Auburn has offensively, and they've got to get him more involved in the passing game and just keep him involved in general. I think they need like 150, 180 yard type game, total yard type game out of him in order to stay in this ball game. If they can do those two things well and sprinkle in a little bit of that Jordan Hare magic, maybe the Tigers keep it a close game. But I think that's going to be a really tall order, a really big ask. At the end of the day, Bama just has the better talent, and the talent gap has never really been bigger. I like what Hugh Freeze is building, but it hasn't been built yet, right? He has a pretty good recruiting class right now, and I think he'll continue to be a factor in the transfer portal. This coming up off season, but Bama is playing at a different level right now. My prediction is 34-17 Bama, and I think that would be a 51 point. So the over might hit. I'd stay away from the over under though. I think that Bama is going to be able to cover this one.
Yeah. Well, you talked about sacks, and so I wanted to kind of look. I've got all the numbers here. Um, Auburn has given up 27 sacks on the year, and some of that's due to Peyton Thorne running the football, and it was more like a tackle for loss. That's but and same with Alabama when I read that number here in a second. But they've also gotten 26 sacks, so pretty good at getting to the quarterback. I wouldn't not top 10 in the nation necessarily, but very good. Alabama, on the other hand, has given up 38 sacks. That's got to be the most sacks in the country. That's got to be very very close to it. I'm sure there might be somebody.
Colorado probably has more, but
Whoa,
it's a
you're right.
short list.
I think Colorado's given up like 50. You're right.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't want to be in the same mentioned in the same breath as with Colorado with
No.
anything really, other than maybe passing yards, and even that's been really crappy year lately. But this ain't a Colorado video. I'll crap on them later. I do that in my free time. Uh, eh, I think both teams are going to be able to get to the quarterback here. Um, I think it's going to be a really low scoring game, and I think the under is something that's I would consider, but you got to be a madman to bet on this game. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I'm not betting on this game. There's no way. But uh, if I had a lean, I guess I would probably take Auburn in the 14.5. And here's the reason why, folks. It's pretty generic betting advice. When the total's under 50 and there's double digit spread, you
Yeah.
take the underdog, especially at home. Okay. And that's just kind of like that really doesn't have anything to do with this game, y'all. That is like a generic betting play because when you bet, it's a coin flip. Okay. All you Auburn and Alabama fans, thank you so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button. Okay. We want to be able to talk college football with you. And Alabama, you win this game and you're going to Atlanta already. Your season's just getting started, and we'd love to have you through the postseason because we're going to have some really cool content. I've got some good ideas that we can do for that time, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And that SEC championship game is going to be one to remember. I've got a feeling. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and don't forget to hit the like button as well. Thanks. Okay, let's check Comments. Oh, sorry. I turned it off right when you turned it on. Don't have a score, but bet the over. Eric over for the over. Is that one you're going to bet, Eric? Are you going to bet the over in that one for real? You going to go against me like that? No, I'm just kidding. You going to show me up in front of my audience, Eric? No. I look, man. This game could go a couple different ways. Alabama could blow their ass out of the water, man. I mean, they really could if this Auburn team has given up. But I like what you said, Mason, about I think Auburn was looking ahead for sure.
Yeah.
I think they want a piece of Alabama. They have nothing in the world to lose. Nothing in the world to lose, and it's at home. It's going to be interesting. The Iron Bowl has always got my attention. Let's go into our last game here, folks. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. I know I say it like 92 times, but it's because I really do appreciate the hell out of you hanging out with us. So thanks again. Don't forget to like the video, and if you haven't subscribed, you should. Let's do it. Saturday, 7 p.m., Florida State is a 6.5-point favorite at the Swamp. They're taking on their in-state rivals, the Florida Gators. Over-under is set at 49.5 points. It's the Sunshine Showdown. That's kind of lame.
It sounds too pleasant to be played in the Swamp.
Sounds like a Special Olympics.
Oh my gosh.
That reminds me of like a Special Olympics like competition or something. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just
like
saying,
a local one, nothing.
a local one, just the Sunshine House for battered children or something. It just sounds like a charity silent auction or something. Anyway, we'll take that segue into this breakdown here. And if you're a Florida State and Florida fan, come hang out with us. Florida State, it's like a whole new team, and we're gonna break this down a little bit. But I don't have numbers on this new Florida State offense.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's why you need to tune in, and we'll give you our breakdown and what we think about the game. We know the Florida Gators pretty daggum good. Hey, Gators fans, welcome to the First and Long College Football Show. Hope you'll subscribe and like the video. Well, we'll address the elephant in the room. Jordan Travis is hurt, bad, not coming back. Pretty much said his goodbyes today at Florida State. He's going to go rehab and all that stuff and get ready for the NFL. So, time to turn the page to Rodemaker, who is now the quarterback. Last week he was 13 of 23, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Hey, real quick, is that how he pronounces his name? Is that right?
Rodemaker, yeah.
It's not Roadmaker?
Mm-mm.
I feel like an idiot.
Yeah,
that makes a whole lot more sense. Roadmaker sounds like an offensive lineman, but Rodemaker, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Something in his family tree there. So I don't know what that means. They made Rod. I'm not sure. But not Rhodes. This guy doesn't. Okay. He doesn't look like a road maker either.
No.
Look, he's a good runner. We saw him run around last week. I mean, I don't know what to think about this offense. Florida State has got to transition to a running offense now. Okay, and statistically for this year, rushing yards per game, they're ranked 64th in the country, 162.3 yards per game. There was been times this year that I've watched Florida State games, and Florida State fans, you tell me in the comment section if I'm correct. When Florida State runs a 2-back set, they run the ball really well. They've got a couple backs to set back there. I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to run 2-back sets, okay? And I think they're going to run some option stuff, some read options. And maybe that's good enough to take care of this Florida defense that is soft as hell. I'm sorry. This defense is bad. I'm just not a fan of this Florida defense. They've had a few moments. Last week, they got a few key stops when they needed it against Missouri. But then again, the defense let them down. Last week, if you didn't catch it, Florida had every chance to beat Missouri at Missouri and get bowl eligible and couldn't do it. Had them 4th and 17 and couldn't stop them. Missouri gets the 4th and 17, dinks, dunks down the field. The thicker kicker nails it. You can go watch our reaction video and where we talked about it on our channel there. But that was I mean, that just pulled the hearts right out of the chest of the Gators. And speaking of that Gators defense, um, they're giving up 224 yards per game passing. That's 90th in the country. So if Rodemaker has got an arm that we don't know about, now would be the time to see it. Okay, because I think Florida is going to load the box in this game. Okay, and they're going to dare him to throw it because I mean, that's not something. It's not proven that Rodemaker can do that. They've got the receivers, but we've seen this offense really heavily rely on the 50-50 ball, and that depends a whole lot on accuracy and getting air under the ball, and it takes reps. I don't know, literally don't know what this Florida State offense is going to be able to do through the air. So, Graham Mertz is out for Florida. Max Brown is going to be the quarterback. He's got 106 passing yards for the year. So yet again, we don't know anything about him. So I think Florida has got to have the same game plan that Florida State does. So Florida State's rushing defense per game, they average giving up 139.6. That's 45th in the country. So, and honestly, the weakness of this defense, to be honest. So honestly, rushing the ball, Mason, in this game, I feel like Florida has an advantage. I feel like they have an advantage running the ball. I really do. Unless Florida State is going to install something that we don't know about this week with that new quarterback and everything, which is very, very possible. I know they are hard at work down there in Tallahassee. But I think that Florida has an offensive advantage here, which is kind of crazy. What's your takes on this game, man? What do you think about the Gators and the Noles?
Yeah, I'm with you. I do think that this game is going to be one on the ground. Look, before last Saturday, I think most people would have assumed that Florida State would win this game easily. I was actually before Jordan Travis, did go down. I was saying, hey, Florida State better watch out for Florida. I think that's a tough game and kind of a trap game for them. But after after Jordan Travis went down with a leg injury, all of a sudden it feels like the Gators have a lot more hope in this game. Coincidentally, the Gators you mentioned lose Graham Mertz, and he's not going to be available for this game. So both quarterbacks are out now, but I feel like the Seminoles' loss was bigger. Jordan Travis has been the majority of their offense this season, and I wonder if it will be a different looking offense than we've seen from Florida State this season, as they have a full week to prepare now, with Tate Rodemaker. So, Tate's going to be starting for the Noles. He was a little bit of background on him. I kind of got interested in who he was and in high school and all that. And he was a 3-star coming out of high school. He's about 6'4". He's got a good size. Played here in Georgia at Valdosta, which is a really good football school here in Georgia. And he's in his 4th year of college. I've seen some Florida State fans really bullish on his abilities to run this offense. Some even saying that he can operate the offense better than Travis, which I understand a fan base being hopeful about its backup quarterback. I know that sometimes the backup quarterback has more publicity, and we know as Georgia fans, the backup quarterback has sometimes a little bit more publicity than the actual starter, especially if that starter runs into any issues. And Rodemaker has good stats on the year as a whole. He's 20 for 31 on the year, 376 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no interceptions. That's great. He's playing like a 4th-year quarterback in a limited sample size. But I just think that Jordan Travis did so much for this offense that it's just not fair to assume that Tate can come in and do a better job. I know that that's not every Florida State fan's opinion, but I have seen some making that argument. For Florida, people may not have noticed, but Graham Mertz has been putting up some really good numbers notably his accuracy, which was up to almost 73%, which was one of the nation's best. And now redshirt freshman Max Brown steps into play. On the season, he's only had 12 pass attempts for 106 yards. He completed 10 of those passes, though, so over 80% passing. He's got 106 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But he also ran the ball a lot when he came in last week against Missouri. So he does add another element to this offense that I think could kind of work in their favor. But I think it's fair to say that there are definitely some bigger question marks surrounding the quarterback situation for Florida than Florida State, with Florida State having the more experienced backup. Statistically, Florida State has had the better defense in most categories, but I think it's fair to point out that Florida State's strength of schedule ranks 16th, while it's fair to point out that Florida's strength of schedule ranks 16th, while Florida State's is just 66th. While Florida State's DBs are among the best in the ACC, they tend to get over aggressive on defense, and they can lose containment. So Florida's rush defense has been suspect all season long. When you couple two defenses that have had a hard time stopping the run with two new quarterbacks, you have the recipe for a short game with a lot of running, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that Florida may have the edge, rushing the football. I'm not sure. I think you're right on the offensive side. I'm not sure that Florida is better equipped defensively to handle Florida State's rushing attack, like Florida State is able to handle Florida's rushing attack. So I do predict that Florida State's going to struggle in this game. I would stay away from the spread personally, but I do think it'll be lower scoring so from a betting perspective, I like the under, but for my score prediction, give me Florida State 24, Florida 20. I think it's going to be a really close game.
Yeah, I like that prediction a lot. I'm ditto on that. I think Florida Gators can cover this thing, and I think Florida State will win the game. A lot of Florida State's production on their defense has came from sacking the quarterback, and it has helped that secondary out a lot. It's helped this defense out a lot. If Florida is not dropping back, they're not going to be getting sacked a lot, man. And I don't think that that's going to be able to aid this Florida State defense in this game. It kind of neutralizes the strength for them. I feel like so definitely an interesting matchup, and I agree. I'm thinking maybe even a first half under, or a first quarter
Definitely,
under.
definitely a
It,
first half under. While these quarterbacks are finding their footing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's the play on this game, because like you said, it's gonna. I wouldn't be surprised at all if this thing is, 7-0 at halftime, or
Mm-hmm.
6-3 at halftime, something like that. Would not surprise me at all. So we will be checking in on the Sunshine Showdown on Saturday. So can't wait to see that one.
That's not an easy one to say either. You try to say that 10 times real fast.
Shally shall seashells by the seashore on the Sunshine Showdown. Hey, I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us, because y'all hung in there the whole time. If you missed anything, we're done for the night. We're about to hop off of here, and you can go back and check that out at the beginning of the video. You guys are awesome. We certainly appreciate it so much. We love coming on here and talking some football. And but now your boy has got to. I got to go get some work done at my job that pays my bills. So let me go and do that. Thank you all again so much. For Marcus and Mason, we are signing out. Everybody have a great night, and we will see you on Thursday for Between the Lines.
Wednesday. It's Thanksgiving week. Wednesday night.
I am just messing the schedule all up. We will see you on Wednesday.
Wednesday night.
Good night.
Good night, y'all.